Katie Kanarsik, and I'm a Groton Bible Chapel engaged youth leader. The title of our message today is A Shepherd Slays a Giant. We'll be looking at 1 Samuel chapters 16 and 17 and learning about the story of David. Previously, we saw how Israel's first king, Saul, didn't live up to God's expectations. So God sent Samuel to find the next king of Israel. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 1 through 13, we see a man named Jesse present 7 of his sons in hopes that one would be chosen as the king. While these sons were all tall, strong, and handsome, and they looked like what kings should look like, God rejected them. Let's read verse 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So the Lord looked past the outward characteristics of each of Jesse's sons and rejected them as king based on the true nature of their hearts. Finally, Samuel asked Jesse to present his youngest son, a shepherd named David. While the text implies that David was healthy appearing, it doesn't describe him in the kingly fashion that the other brothers were. From the world's perspective, David did not measure up to be the next great king. But in God's eyes, David was the perfect fit, for God was looking for a king that would reflect his heart and fight for his people. I wonder how often we judge others based on their outward characteristics, especially when we picture a leader or someone that's really successful. We assume that if someone looks good on the outside, maybe they're athletic, attractive, good in school, well-dressed, etc., that maybe they'll be good on the inside. But the Bible speaks of the heart as the center of who we are. Our heart drives all that we do. In Proverbs, we are told to guard our heart above all. We must give our hearts the time and attention to be aware of our motives, intentions, and desires, and to reflect the heart of God. Now let's return to the story in 1 Samuel chapter 17. So God appoints David as the future king of Israel. Shortly after David was anointed, he was faced with a battle against the great warrior named Goliath. But first, let's set the scene. This account took place in the valley of Elah. On one side of the valley, the Israelites set up camp, and on the other side of the valley, the Philistines set up camp. From the Philistine camp, a champion warrior named Goliath emerged. Now Goliath was kind of an intimidating dude. He was about 9 feet 9 inches tall, fully armored in heavy bronze metal, and shouting at the Israelites to send one of their men to fight him. The stakes on this fight were super high. The battle would determine the fate of the entire war. For 40 days, the Israelites sat idly by while Goliath taunted them into battle. Now around this time, David returns from tending to his father's sheep to find Goliath challenging the Israelites into battle. In verse 32, David says to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant," speaking of himself, "will go and fight him." Now, as you can imagine from earlier descriptions of David, he wasn't necessarily the biggest or the strongest person in the Israelite army. And to face the champion warrior Goliath, but when faced with doubt, David says in verse 34 to 37, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it and I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the lion and the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." In this account, we see David's actions as a demonstration of his deep trust in the Lord. He knew that he would need to work hard and fight, but he also trusted that the Lord would rescue him. Finally, Saul agreed to send David to battle Goliath, and in verses 45 to 51, we see one of the shortest and most epic battles in Scripture. Let's read that together. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands." As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. Whoa. Now it's easy to read this story and think of it as another story where the underdog achieved whatever he set his mind to. And while David was courageous and overcame an incredible challenge, that's not the main point of the story. David's firm trust in God to win a seemingly impossible battle against Goliath and win the war for all of Israel gives us a glimpse of the bigger story of the Bible and of the coming king. Jesus is the greater king, who God sent to win the victory over sin and death. Through his death and resurrection, Jesus saved.